Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Heirs of the Horse, Chapter 1. Jason Solo stayed at Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy for about a month before he managed to set up his room the way he wanted it. Within an ancient temple on the jungle moon of Yavin 4, the student quarters were dank and dim, cold every night. But Jason and his twin sister Jaina had spent days scrubbing the moss-covered stone blocks of their adjoining rooms, adding glow panels and portable corner warmers. The son of Han Solo and Princess Leia stood now in the orangish morning light that spilled through slit windows in the thick temple walls. Outside in the jungle, large birds shrieked as they fought for their insect breakfasts. As he did every morning before going to Uncle Luke's lessons, Jason fed and took stock of the bizarre and exotic creatures he had collected out in the unexplored jungles on Yavin 4. He liked to gather new pets. The far wall was stacked with bins and cages, transparent display cages, and bubbling aquariums. Many of the containers were ingenious contraptions invented by his mechanically inclined sister. He appreciated Jaina's inventions, though he couldn't understand why she was more interested in the cages themselves than the creatures they contained. One cage rattled with two clamoring tree dwelling rodents with protruding eyes and long jaws filled with sharp teeth. Centaurils would swarm across the arboreal highways, never slowing down, eating anything that sat still long enough for them to take a bite. Jason had a fun time catching these two. In a damp, transparent enclosure, tiny swimming crabs used sticky mud to build complex nets and with small towers and curving battlements. In a rounded water bowl, pinkish mucus salamanders swam formlessly, diluted and without shape, until they crawled out into a perching shelf. Then they hardened their outer membranes to a soft jelly-like form with pseudopods and a mouth, allowing them to hunt among the insects and the weeds. In another cage, strung thick, tough wires, iridescent blue piranha beetles crawled around with clacking jaws, constantly trying to chew their way free. Out in the jungle, a wild swarm of piranha beetles could descend with a thin, deadly whine. When they set upon their prey, the beetles would turn a large animal to gnawed bones in minutes. Jason was proud to have the only specimens in captivity in his menagerie. Often Jason's most difficult job was not keeping the exotic pets caged, but figuring out what they ate. Sometimes they fed on fruit or flowers, sometimes they devoured fresh meat chunks. Sometimes the larger ones even broke free of their confinement and ate the other specimens, much to Jason's dismay. Unlike Jason and Jaina's strict tutors at home on the city-covered planet Coruscant, Luke Skywalker did not depend on rigorous course of studies. To be a Jedi, Uncle Luke explained, one had to understand many pieces of the whole tapestry of the galaxy, not just a rigid pattern set by other people. So Jason was allowed to spend much of his free time tromping through the dense underbrush, pushing jungle weeds and flowers out of the way, collecting beautiful insects, scooping up rare and unusual fungi. He had always had a strange and deep affinity for living creatures, much as his sister had a talent for understanding machinery and gadgets. He could coax the animals with his special force talent, getting them to come right up to him, where he could study them at his leisure. Some of the Jedi students, especially spoiled and troublesome Raynar, were not all pleased about the small zoo Jason kept in his room, but Jason studied the creatures and took care of them and learned much from the animals. From a small cistern Jaina had installed in the wall, Jason ladled cool water into trays inside the cages. His motion disturbed a family of purple jumping spiders, so they bounced and hopped along the netting of the cage roof. He ran his fingers along the thin wires and whispered to them, "Calm down, it's all right." The spiders stopped their antics and settled down to drink through their long, hollow fangs. In another cage, the whisper birds had fallen silent, possibly hungry. Jason would have to collect some fresh nectar funnels from the vines growing in the stones of the crumbling temple across the river. It was almost time to go to morning lessons. Jason tapped at the sides of the containers, waving goodbye to his pets. Just before turning to leave, though, he hesitated. He peered into the bottommost container, where the transparent crystal snake usually sat coiled in a bed of dry leaves. The crystal snake was nearly invisible, and Jason could see it only by looking at the creature in a certain light. But now, no matter which way he looked, he saw no glitter of glassy scales, no rainbowish curve of light that bent around the transparent creature. Alarmed, he leaned down and discovered that the bottom corner of the cage had been bent upward, just enough for a thin serpent to slither out. "Oh, I've got a bad feeling about this," Jason said, unconsciously echoing the words his father so often used. The crystal snake was not particularly dangerous, at least Jason didn't think so. He did know from first-hand experience that the bite of the snake brought about a moment of piercing pain, then a victim fell into a deep sleep. Even though after an hour or so one would wake up and feel no ill effects, this was the sort of hazard someone like Raynar might use to cause trouble and perhaps force Jason to move his pets to an outside storage module. And now the crystal snake was loose, his heart racing with fear, but he remembered to use one of his Uncle Luke's Jedi relaxation techniques to keep himself calm, to help himself think more clearly. Jason knew immediately what he had to do. He would have his sister, Jaina, help him find the snake before anyone else noticed it was gone. He slipped into the dim hall, his dark round eyes flickered from side to side to check for anyone who might notice him. Then he ducked into the next rounded stone doorway and stood blinking in the shadows of his sister's room. One entire wall of Jaina's quarters was filled with neatly stacked containers of spare parts, cyber fuses, electronic circuit loops, and tiny gears taken from dismantled and obsolete droids. She had removed unused power packs and control systems from the old rebel war room deep in the inner chambers of the temple pyramid. The ancient temple had once been headquarters for the secret rebel base hidden in the jungles on this isolated moon, long before the twins had been born. Their mother, Princess Leia, had helped the rebels defend their base against the Emperor's terrible Death Star. Their father, Han Solo, had been just a smuggler at the time, but he had rescued Luke Skywalker at the end. Now, though, most of the old equipment from the empty rebel base lay unused and forgotten by the Jedi trainees. Jaina spent her free time tinkering with it, putting the components together in new ways. Her room was crammed with so much large equipment that Jason barely had enough space to squeeze inside. He looked around, but saw no sign of the escaped crystal snake. "Jaina," he said. "Jaina, I need your help." He looked around the dim room, trying to find his sister. He smelled the sharp, biting odor of scorched fuses, heard the clunk of a heavy tool against metal. "Just a minute." Jaina's voice echoed hollowly inside a barrel-shaped hunk of corroded machinery that took up half her quarters. He remembered when the two of them, with the help of their muscular friend Tenel Ka, had somewhat clumsily used their force powers to haul the heavy machine along the winding corridors so Jaina could work on it in her room far into the night. "Hurry," Jason said, feeling the urgency grow. Jaina squirmed backward out of an opening in the intake pipe. Her dark brown hair was straight and simple, tied back with a string to keep it away from her narrow face. Smudges of grease made hash marks on her left cheek. Though her shoulder-length hair was as rich and thick as her mother's, Jaina never wanted to take the time to twist and tangle into the lovely, convoluted hairstyles for which Princess Leia had been so famous. Jaina extended his hand to help her to her feet. "My crystal snake's loose again. We have to find it. Have you seen it?" She took little notice of his words. No, I've been busy in here. Almost finished, though." She pointed down at the grimly pumping machinery. "When this is all done, we're able to install it in the river next to the temple. The flowing water can turn the wheels and charge all of our batteries." Her words picked up speed as she began to talk. Once Jaina got started, she'd love to explain things. Jason tried to interrupt, but could find no pause in her speech. But my snake! With phased output jacks, we can deliver power to the great temple, provide all the light we need. With special protein skimmers added on, we could extract algae from the water and process it into food. We could even power all of the Academy's communication systems and... Jason stopped her. "Jaina, why are you spending all your time doing this? Don't we have dozens of permanent power cells left over from the old rebel base?" She sighed, making him feel as if he had missed some deeply important point. "I'm not building this because it's useful," she said. "I'm doing it because see if I can. Once I know I can do it, I don't have to waste time anymore wondering whether or not anything I learn here is useful or not." Jason was still not sure he understood, but then his sister could never grasp his fascination for living creatures. "In the meantime, Jaina, could you help me find my snake? It's loose. I don't know where to look for it." "All right," Jaina said, brushing her dirty hands on her stained work overall. "If the snake escaped into your room, it probably moved down a corridor." The two of them stepped onto the long hall. Side by side, they scanned the shadows and listened. Jason's room was the last chamber in one of the temple passages leading to the cold, cracked stone wall. But none of the cracks was wide enough for the crystal snake to hide in. "We'll have to check room from room," Jaina said. Jason nodded. "Something's wrong. We should be able to sense it. Maybe I can use the force to track the snake, wherever it might be hiding." They heard the other Jedi students in their quarters dressing, washing up, or just catching a few extra minutes of sleep. Jason cocked his ears and listened, half hoping to hear someone scream out loud, because he would know where the snake had gone. They slipped from room to room, pausing at closed doors. Jason touched his fingers in the wood, but he caught no tingling sensation that might indicate his escaped pet. But when they came to Raynar's half-open door, they immediately sensed something out of the ordinary. Peering inside, the twins spotted the boy sprawled on the polished stone tiles of the floor. Raynar wore fine garments of purple, gold, and scarlet cloth, the colors of the noble family's house. Despite Uncle Luke's gentle suggestions, Raynar rarely took off his fancy costume, never allowed himself to be seen in drab but comfortable Jedi training clothes. Raynar's bristly blonde hair shone like flecks of gold dust in the morning sunlight spilling into his room through the window slits. His flushed cheeks sagged in and blew out as he snored softly in an awkward position on the cold tile floor. "Oh, blaster bolts," Jason said. "I think we found my snake." Jaina slid the door closed and stationed herself by the crack so the crystal snake couldn't get past her. Jason knelt beside Raynar's form and let his eyelids flutter closed. He stretched his fingers into the air and his knuckles cracked. He let his mind flow, imagining what a snake's thought might be like. As usual, he felt many things at once in the forest, but he focused down, looking for the snake. He sensed a slim, languid line of thought. His easily satisfied mind, that right now felt cozy and safe. Its only thoughts were warm, sleep, and quiet. The coiled-up crystal snake dozed beneath Raynar in the folds of his purple underrobes. "Here, Jaina," Jason whispered. She left the door to crouch beside him. The fabric of her stained overall hissed like another snake as she dropped to her knees. "I suppose it's directly under Raynar's body?" Jason nodded. "Yes, it's where it's the warmest." "That's a problem," Jaina said. "I could roll him over and you grab the snake." "No, that would disturb it," Jason said. "It might bite Raynar again." Jaina frowned. "He'd sleep through a week of worth of classes." "Yeah," Jason said. "But then at least Uncle Luke could finish a lecture without getting interrupted by Raynar's questions." Jason sensed the coiled snake with his mind, saw it resting peacefully. But just then, as if Raynar heard them talking about him, the boy snorted and stirred in his sleep. The snake surged with alarm. Jason quickly sent out a calming message using Jedi relaxation techniques Luke had taught him. He sent peaceful thoughts, quieting thoughts that calmed not only the serpent but Raynar as well. "Working together, we could use our Jedi powers to lift Raynar up," Jason suggested. "Then I'll pull the snake out from under him." "Well, what are we waiting for?" Jaina said, looking at her brother with raised eyebrows. Closing their eyes, the twins concentrated. They touched the fringes of Raynar's colorful robes with their fingertips as they imagined how light he could be, that he was merely a feather wafting in the air, that he weighed nothing at all, and they could make him drift upward. Jason held his breath, and the still snoring Jedi student began to rise from the tiled floor. Raynar's loose garments dangled like curtains underneath him, freeing the sleepy snake. Suddenly deprived of its warm hiding place, the crystal snake woke up in anger, instinctively wanting to lash out. Jason sensed it uncoiling and seeking a living target, ready to strike. "Hold Raynar," he shouted to Jaina as he flashed forward to catch the slithering crystal snake. His fingers wrapped around its head, grasping it behind the compact triangular head. He focused calming thoughts into the small reptile brain, calling its anger, soothing it. Jason's quick movement and release of the force startled Jaina, and she managed to hold Raynar up for only a second or two. As Jason worked to calm the serpent, Jaina's grip on the floating boy weakened and finally broke. Raynar tumbled to the hard stone floor with a pile of arms and legs and garishly colored cloth. The thud of the impact was enough to wake him even from his snake-drugged sleep. He sat up with a grunt, blinking his blue eyes and shaking his head. Jason continued to calm the invisible snake hidden in his hand. He sent tingling thoughts into its mind until the serpent fizzed with pleasure. Content, it wrapped itself around Jason's wrist, resting its flat, transparent head on its clenched fist. Even in the best of light, it barely shimmered. Its scales were like thin film of diamonds, its black eyes like two bits of charcoal. Groggy, Raynar looked at the dark-haired twin standing next to him. He scratched his head in confusion. "Jason? Jaina? Well, what are you? Hey." He sat up straighter and shook his left arm as if it had gone numb. Then he glared at Jason. "I thought one of your creatures was in here. Just for a minute. And that's the last thing I remember. Is one of your pets loose?" Embarrassed, Jason slid a snake-covered hand behind his back. "No," he said. "I can honestly say that all of my pets are completely accounted for." Jaina bent down to help the other boy to his feet. You must have fallen asleep, Raynar. You really should have gone to your sleeping pallet if you're so tired. She brushed his clothes off. Now look. You've got dust all over your pretty robes. Raynar looked in alarm at the smudges of dust on his ruddy garments. Now I'll have to put this whole new outfit on a whole new outfit. I can't be seen in public like this. He brushed his fingers over the cloth in dismay. Well, we'll let you get changed then, Jason said, backing toward the door. See you at the lecture. Jason and Jaina ducked out of Raynar's room. Feeling suddenly bold enough to joke, Jason waved goodbye with the hand that still carried the invisible crystal snake. Together, the twins raced back to their quarters so they could put on their own robes in time to hear Uncle Luke teach them how to become Jedi Knights.